Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Live. Today is Wednesday, so it's one of our longer form shows, and you're lucky to join us. It's one of our interview shows today, which is really exciting to learn some more from someone in the employment field. So, Jeremy, do you want to say hello to everyone? I should have introduced myself as well.
Well, that's Craig Mason, and I'm Jeremy Stretton. I hope everyone's having a great day.
Excellent. So, thanks for joining us. As I said, today is one of our interview shows, and we're interviewing a lady by the name of Nerissa Chaux. Now, Nerissa started her career as a Christian minister and built the largest youth group of 12 to 18-year-olds here in Queensland, Australia. She then transferred her love of helping people achieve their goals to recruitment. So Nerissa has been in the recruitment industry now for 16 years. Worked and lived in Asia and has recruited nationally in the Netherlands, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Philippines across all corporate roles. In 2009, she started a business during the global financial crisis, opening a Brisbane executive recruitment and search business by the name of Brown & Chase with co-founder Ephraim. So starting in Brisbane, they scaled the business nationally, and then they sold that particular brand in April of last year, so that's 2017. So Nerissa obviously understands how having the right people on board, the right process and plan is critical to continued business success, and that's why we have her on the show, so she can share some of that knowledge with our listeners or viewers in relation to employment and different ways you could look at that. So when they were looking on Chase, offshoring was recommended in the admin side of things, and the Philippines was where they went for the offshoring. So 3 years ago, they took to offshore their back office things. Looking at that as the most cost-effective way to upscale their business. So when then the surprising thing happened, they were using offshore business. Their customers also noticed what Nerissa and Ephraim were doing and asked them to help them with offshoring. And most businesses in the competitive, small business market, they were fighting to stay competitive, or there's a way in the game, etc., etc. So they started the new company that they're now running called Filter Global. Is what Nerissa is going to talk about today. Active speaker in various topics about offshoring and recruitment, and also a guest lecturer at the QUT Business School. So, Jeremy, what were the sort of top 3 things you got away from the interview with Nerissa?
Yeah, so Nerissa's an interesting lady. She's got a great history. So probably the 3 main things is the difference between offshoring and outsourcing, and really what what that difference is, and I think a lot of people probably don't realize that difference. The second one is really going through some examples of the challenges that she sees with outsourcing or offshoring, and in her business, what she actually sees as those challenges. And also, we go through some common mistakes, and that's really interesting to see the common mistakes that people make and how similar they are to common mistakes just in the normal business world with employees. So look, I think everyone's going to get a lot of interest out of this episode. As always, you can check out our show notes, and there is a workbook. If you go to businesslegallifecycle.com/095, you'll be able to get that. But in the meantime, please enjoy my interview with Nerissa Chaux. Welcome, Nerissa, to Business Legal Lifecycle TV and our podcast.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on today.
No worries. So we've gone through in our intro a bit about your history, but do you want to tell us a bit about your history and how you got into the offshoring business?
Absolutely. Okay, so Filter Global actually was, I would say, a very happy accident in 2016. So a bit of history. I have 16 years of recruitment experience. I had also lived in Asia and recruited in the Asia region for 12 months. And in 2009, in the GFC, my husband and I had awesome jobs. Paid very well. We loved what we were doing, but we decided that this was our perfect opportunity to open our own recruitment agency because we had a CEO that we used to work for, and he always told us that if you want to know how good you really are, you do it in a recession because you learn two things: the value of money and the value of your relationships.
Yep.
And so we thought, okay, well, let's resign tomorrow and let's make it happen. A little bit crazy, looking back, it's like, I don't know how we did that. We had mortgages, cars, etc., going from big salaries to nothing.
Yep.
So what we did is we started in our bedroom, to computers, to phones, and we plodded along and really enjoyed what we were doing because we could make our own decisions. And then we started growing. So we actually started to grow nationally. So we had a team in Sydney and we had partners in Melbourne and Perth.
Yep.
So as we built the business, it got to a stage where we needed to control the administrative function and really be able to audit, because you know what recruiters are like, a little bit out there.
Yep.
And what our business was, because it was a search firm, it was an executive search, the biggest things that were important to Efren and I were quality and consistency, and making sure that regardless of where our clients, who they were dealing with, they were getting the same output.
Right.
And so when we looked at it in Australia, we realised we couldn't, look, to be honest with you, it just wasn't a viable option in terms of cost.
Yep.
Yeah, so we were referred to the Philippines. We knew a few people had done it, but we didn't really know. So even though we lived in Asia and didn't know the Philippines very well, so it was kind of like, okay, find an offshoring company and we'll start there. So how our offshoring business started was very organic. We'd been there for quite a while. We started with administration assistants, and over the time, we had our Australian clients here who we recruited for who also wanted to offshore, or who were offshoring, and it wasn't working.
Yep.
But they couldn't bring it back to Australia. It had to be still done overseas. And they're like, it's working for you. We don't know what your secret sauce is, but can you help us?
Yep.
So it was very, we were like, yeah, sure, we know your business here. We understand your culture. We understand what you're looking for. Your teams can just sit with us.
Yep.
So it was first just helping them recruit people, and they just sat in our team. And one of our clients particularly, they saw productivity increase by 30% in 4 weeks.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yes. And so it was like one client, then it became 3 clients, and it became 6 clients. And then F and I realized, all obviously complimentary at that stage, we were like, there's a business here. And we really saw the value of it. We could see how it could change a business and change it quickly. And, you know, some of our clients, they were surviving, then they were suddenly thriving really quickly. Like the turnaround in their turnover and their bottom line was impacted very quickly, which is very exciting.
Yes.
I think for all business owners, we get excited when things start working.
Yep.
But also, I think the conversations you have as an offshoring partner compared to a recruitment partner is very different. And what we got excited about is we're now having business conversations, and we're talking to clients really about their whole of business, and it was a partnership. We were in the trenches together, and that's what we love. That's what we get excited about is their success is our success. And when they're struggling, we're there with them. And that's the exciting thing. So that's kind of the history of how we got into offshoring and why we're so passionate about it. And so basically what we identified where the link was missing for small to medium-sized businesses is people offshore, and there's an offshoring company, and what they're really good at is facilities. They're great at providing good offices, IT, payroll, HR, but the missing link is making it work.
Yes.
And when you're a small business, you can't afford to get it wrong, and not just cost-wise, but also time-wise. And so what we see ourselves as an offshoring consultancy where we're teaching our clients how to build and manage a team, an offshore team that actually works.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So obviously you've got a lot of experience in the industry. How do you think that's helped you in what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think what's been fantastic is actually is the recruitment side, first of all. So I think when you're from an agency perspective, you have the privilege of dealing with so many different companies. So from large corporates to medium business to small business to micro, and Fortune 500 companies. So some are just based in Brisbane, some are in Sydney, some are national. Then you've got the international companies you deal with. So I think the benefit from an external party is I've seen how businesses operate and how they attract talent and what works and what doesn't. And, even if you think about shares, when I started my career in an accounting recruitment firm, and I remember we could always tell as soon as accountants from one business you get the flood of resumes, you would know that business is in trouble, because the first people that understand the financials and where the situation of a business is the accounting team.
Yes.
So I found it really fascinating, I think, personally, about why do people keep good people? How do people attract the right people? How do they grow? So you see it from lots of different things, which I think is really helpful. And then I think being a business owner myself, it's not that this is our second stint, and we've gone from a small business to scaling to selling.
Yes.
Our first business. So our first business, the executive search firm, we sold in 2017. So I think that also, because we're dealing with business owners, there's so much insight you can bring them and they can bring you.
Yes, that's right.
So I think it's all quite complementary. I think business owners like to deal with business owners because we go through the same challenges, and we have highs and we have lows, and it's much easier, in my opinion, to be an employee.
Yes, much easier.
So much easier to get a paycheck, and I think it's very hard to understand unless you are a business owner. Like the complexities, and not just in business, but the emotional side. For me, that's where I see the value that to businesses is. We just haven't been in one business and then made our own business. We've actually had thousands of businesses, and I've personally interviewed over 8,000 people. That adds so much knowledge about what's happening in the business, how they run it, what works, what doesn't work, from a technical point of view, as well as a business point of view with systems, as well as obviously a recruitment retention point of view.
Yeah, that's all great. It's interesting what you say about starting the business in the GFC. We did the same thing when we started our law firm, and it's amazing how people think you're silly for doing that, and then when you make a success, they go, "Oh, well, it must be easy to do in a recession," and they don't realise the challenges that are involved in that business at that point in time, do they? It's
No, and I think it's funny. Like we had a junior consultant work for us a number of years ago, and this is when I felt really old, Jeremy. He said, "What was it like working in the GFC?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, I feel so old." This 22-year-old, adult or child, man-child, was fascinated about the journey. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think people do think you're crazy. In our case, people were they knew not to say anything.
Yes.
But I think it gives you that comfort too, that if you can make it then, you can kind of, know how to make it work in the good times.
That's right. Thanks, Nerissa. Well, that's really interesting and good to hear your history so people know where you're coming from. And I wanted to talk and move into a topic of offshoring. And I know that, as when we were talking about this, I interchangeably use the term outsourcing and offshoring, and I know it's different. So can we start by defining the concept of offshoring for people so that they know what we're talking about?
Absolutely. And I think you're not the only one. My accountant, I actually recently did a training session with me because he's an excellent referrer, but he didn't really understand the concepts. Yep. So I actually did a session with him so he understood our product and why offshoring was really different to outsourcing. Yep. Okay, there's 4 pillars of offshoring outsourcing terms, and they all mean completely different things. So there's freelancing, there's outsourcing, there's offshoring, and there's incorporation. So freelancing, we all pretty much probably had some exposure to that. We've probably used Upworks for blogs or logos or like short-term things. We have access to people all over the world who pitch. And the way generally people communicate is through messaging rather than having a conversation, and it's short-term specific task. Mm-hmm. And freelancing is an excellent gateway, actually, for people to start feeling comfortable with offshoring. Yep. Outsourcing, the best way for me to explain it is if you want to outsource your payroll, you engage a company. Yep. You have no say if you get Martha, Mary, John, Sam. You have no control how the company recruits, trains, quality control, who does your work, etc. So outsourcing is outsourcing a specific task. Mm-hmm. It's someone that you don't know does the work and sends it back to you. Yep. Offshoring, and personally I've tried all of these methods. Why we're really passionate about offshoring, why we see how it works for small to medium-sized businesses is there's an entity, of course, we're in the Philippines, so there's a Philippines entity, and they're responsible for the facilities and HR, payroll, contracts. Yep. But the great thing is, as a small business, we have control over who we hire, what jobs we want to get them to do, what tasks we want them to do. We're responsible for their training. We're responsible for their performance management. We're responsible for their career. So essentially, they're an employee. Yes. Even though I think legally they're an employee of the Philippines entity, but we treat them like our employees. And that's where we see the impact and the benefits of offshoring, because you are in full control.
So they become a member of the team as opposed to just someone who does a task for you at some point in time.
Yes, and it's one person dedicated to your business. They don't support other businesses. It's their one full-time job dedicated to your business, and that's very powerful. And and that's where we've seen a difference with those who've tried outsourcing to offshoring. Yep. The frustration with outsourcing is you don't know who's doing your work. Yep. There's normally, for some reason, really high turnover, so you're constantly getting people who are getting retrained. Every business has their own way of doing things. Every manager within the business has their own way of doing things, and it takes time for people to understand how you like things done. Yep. And that's very frustrating in an outsourcing model. But with offshoring, it's your own person, and they building that relationship with you.
Yep.
So yes, they can complete the tasks. Yes, they can complete projects, but they really become embedded into your team. And it's like you have two offices. You have, say, a Brisbane office and a Manila office, or a Brisbane, Sydney, Manila office. It's not some person in the internet producing some work and sending it back to you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, oh, sorry, did you have something further?
No, I was going to say, lastly, the incorporated.
Yes.
Generally what happens there is people might have a Manila team. Generally, they'll start looking about 40 plus people, and they think, I'm paying all this money for management fees in the offshoring company. Maybe it might be a better idea to incorporate myself. So you have to have a local, a Filipino buy into your business, and then you're responsible for the building, office maintenance, legal, employment, HR. So that's the next step, evolution of offshoring.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that gives people a good background as to what the differences are and how they can look at the different models. And so can you give us some examples of some roles that can be offshored? And there's a two-part question. And what challenges might occur in those different roles?
Okay. So first of all, most people would naturally know back end. So the most obvious roles would be process-driven roles. So administration, your personal assistants, your sales admin, your IT, your help desk, developers. In law, you can have Australian lawyers based in the Philippines. You can have paralegals, accountants, bookkeepers, auditors, tax accountants, graphic designers, copywriters, SEO, digital. So I think in terms of how I structure it, it's probably easy to say corporate. So under the umbrella of law, accounting, real estate, construction, even with draftsmen, accounting, HR, admin, IT, digital. So a really broad spectrum. In terms of strategy versus execution, in my opinion and my experience, strategy should always be done in Australia. Client-facing roles should be done in Australia or US or UK, wherever you're from. That's really, really important, and execution or facilitation can be offshored. But design work shouldn't be. And to give you an example, caught up with a potential new client a few weeks ago, and they had come, it was a very detailed Excel spreadsheet of every job that they wanted one person to do. And so they had gone to a few offshoring companies who said, yes, one person can do that and it's absolutely achievable and it'll be success. When we mapped it out with them, and it took us 24 hours to really look at it because it was quite heavy. It was what we had identified. There was 3 roles with 3 completely different skill sets. And it doesn't matter if you couldn't find a person even in Australia with those 3 skill sets. And besides that, there's no way one person could physically do this job. Like, there was just not enough hours a day. It was virtually impossible. It was set to fail. So what we recommended was you can have these 2 roles offshored. So we've identified there's 3 roles, 2 roles offshore. 1 job has to be in Australia because it's strategy. It's you dealing with clients, you're building a base. You know, it's not smart to offshore that. So I think it's where people go wrong, in my opinion, Jeremy, is they just go, oh yeah, I need this job and I'll offshore it without really looking at the business implications. And not really thinking, no, in Australia, would I be able to find someone who could do this? Probably not. So then how can I find someone internationally who potentially may or may not be able to do this? So I think there are the challenges. Personally, about call centres, we are probably the only offshoring firm in Australia that does not believe that call centres should be offshored. So we believe, and from what we, a lot of the research that we've done, and Commonwealth Bank has also done the same research, that Australians love talking to Australians. So call centres or telesales roles, in my opinion, should be kept in Australia. And you can outsource that, obviously, to Australian companies who specialise in telesales. You don't have to hire it in-house.
Yep.
So that's my personal opinion of, I guess, what you can offshore and what should be kept here.
Yep.
But also, if you don't mind me adding, Jeremy, that a lot of people think Filipinos are not strategic, that they can only do process.
Yep.
And that's not true. They fly planes in the Philippines. They have a government. They have a government. No, but seriously, like if you think about it logically, they have a government, they have law firms, they have international advertising agencies. They're 100 million people. They're very smart. They're very smart people. It's about tapping into the right person.
Yep.
Who can think strategically, who understands your business, and you give them permission to come up with ideas.
Yep. I think that's a common misconception about people around the world. People, when you don't see someone, I heard a great quote the other day at a conference that you can't hate someone or dislike someone if you see them face to face. And I think that's the same thing. Like if you don't see that person, if you don't know that person and you haven't been there, it's very easy to assume that it's a different world. But really, the world's so similar across every country. So even China, and India and places like that are very similar. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I was talking to someone recently, and when we show the video, our office video, people are amazed because it honestly looks like a George Street in Sydney.
Yep.
Like it's massive building. We're with Citibank, we're with TPG.
Yep.
It's like Riparian Plaza equivalent in Brisbane. And when people look at it, they're like, oh, wow, they have streets and they have buildings. And you're like, yes. But I think it's just because we're not exposed to it. So I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Not being critical of people who think that way. If you haven't been exposed to it, you don't know. And that's natural. Yeah. That's human nature. So there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So
exactly.
So you talked about the mistake people make in understanding the roles that they did. What are some other common mistakes that people make in offshoring?
Oh, okay. There's probably a few. I would say there's a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, hiring the wrong people, and probably no support or guidance. And with that, I mean, I've got 1,000 stories I can share with you.
I think stories help people understand what we're talking about and give some context to it. So I'd love you to give some examples of, especially I can see that the supervision, lack of supervision, and that would be a really good one for people to understand what they need to do a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I talk about is everything. When you're dealing with someone in another country, or even if you're dealing with them in the Sydney office, you've got to over communicate and you've really where I've seen the powerful impact is you're dealing with another human.
Yes.
It is not someone who's Filipino. It is they're a team member. They're valuable, and you've got to build relationships. And a really simple thing that I find most people seem to fail to forget is they may have this great team culture in their Australian offices and high retention, and people love coming to work and they're high performing, but they forget to apply the same principles overseas. So to give you a really good example, one of our clients has been with us for a long time. They've got quite a big team with us. I was doing a webcam camera check the other day with all our Filipino staff because, sometimes you can just see their chin, forehead, teeth. And so I thought, that's it. I'm going to get everyone I'm going to test their webcams and give them some insight. And this is how it came about. So the two boys, I call these two guys, they're developers, and they said, oh, I don't know why you're testing our webcams because we don't use them. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't? Don't you? I know you have daily meetings with your manager. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's just on phone. I said, when was the last time that you saw your manager's face? 6 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And interestingly, and this is a great business, right? They really look after their team. I rang him. I just had a chat. I was like, oh, hey, this is what's happened. And he said, Nerissa, I don't need to video call. I don't need to check up on them. I know they're doing their work.
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, you're misunderstanding the importance of this. You're not getting it. It's not about checking up on them. It's continually building that relationship.
That's right.
And having conversations, and also, as you know, the power of, even like us today with the video conferencing, we can see each other's reactions.
That's right.
You know when to lead. You know if they're not quite getting it and they want to ask a question, but they're not, and you can lead in. So I said the power of the face, the power of the visual is so important. And it's not about checking on them. It's about communicating and building that relationship. And people think you have to talk, you know, they're like, oh, but I just don't want to press that Skype button and talk to them for 20 minutes. I'm like, say good morning. It's a 2-minute conversation. How was your night? What'd you get up to? Like one of my team members has just started going to the gym and she's got a schedule. So we talk about, and she's always telling me how many calories she's lost and what, you know, what machines she's just discovered. And so that's just having a real life conversation. That's what I do with my colleague here.
That's right.
And that's, so in talk, you know, when you talk about, sometimes it's the basics that sound so simple. Like your listeners today will be thinking, that's common sense. But sometimes we forget because they're not sitting next to us. So that would be a perfect example of something really simple. Another one, you'll love this. One of our clients in Sydney brought their team over to Sydney a few months ago.
Right.
So they brought them out. Their office is actually right in the heart of Sydney CBD. Their apartment was near the Opera House. It was beautiful. So one day the director, they have a number of directors, but one of them said, oh, what are you guys doing tonight? And the team said, oh, we're just going to go back to the hotel and just hang out at the hotel. And he said, you know, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You should explore Sydney, you know, take every advantage of it. Nothing was said. Go back to Manila. You know, 3-4 weeks later, they were having a meeting with the other director who was pre-plotting the plan for the next 12 months. So I was talking about projects they're going to work on, the direction of the business, what he wanted them to achieve. And one of them said, I don't know why you're telling us this. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean why I'm not telling you this? And they said, well, the other director said this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so you probably will have us fired in the next 12 months and we won't be here.
Gosh.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable. To us, we're like, we didn't mean it that way. There's absolutely no way that, I mean, you can imagine, if you're bringing out your team to Australia, you're invested in them, right?
That's right, yep.
You're not going to fire them. And it was... And if they hadn't built that relationship where she would feel comfortable in saying that to her manager, this is what happens in the Philippines. They would literally start looking for a job over a simple miscommunication.
Wow.
And it's where people like don't understand is they don't take time to understand the cultural nuances and the cultural differences. And sometimes you've got to learn from experience, and that's the reason why we've started our business is we don't want our clients going through the same mistakes that we did. It's our job is to coach and guide and mentor you, not just from the Australian point of view, but our team in Manila help the Filipino staff also understand where Australian businesses are coming from and Australian managers and what we expect. So I think from a really simple miscommunication, that could have gone sideways if they hadn't had a good relationship. And he was shocked. He was like, I don't even understand how could have gotten that. But they explained from their point of view because the biggest fear for Filipinos is losing their job.
Well, for most people, really.
And so just being understanding that. So I think you can see if you're not sure how they're going to interpret things, if you don't invest time and treat them like people and treat them like part of your team, these things can go wrong. Another interesting one was there's a client that we're working with, and their staff in Manila are fantastic. Honestly, they're just amazing. If I could steal them, I would, to join our team. And with that, what was interesting when I was in Manila recently, a few weeks ago, I was talking to them and I said, how often do you talk to your managers or the team in general? And they're like, oh yeah, we have the daily calls and then we have weekly WIP meetings, which is video conference everyone can see. But the interesting part of it was they're actually put on mute. So they're listening in to the Australian team talking, but they don't have a right to contribute.
Right.
Yeah. And so when I spoke to the CEO of this business, he was like, oh my God, like, yes, of course we want them to contribute. And the Australian team were like, why don't these people ever give their opinion? Like, why don't the team in Manila, do they not care? Do they not like our business? Do they not have ideas? And it was a simple miscommunication where you're putting them on mute. So how is that interpreted to them?
Yep.
And that's when we talk about lack of understanding, lack of support, no one telling you how things are.
Yep.
And it can create big effects where people will start feeling, as you could imagine, isolated.
Yes, absolutely.
And not part of the team. And the Filipino culture is, it's not like the Australian culture where we probably talk to our manager and go, you promised me this and you haven't delivered. I'm putting you on notice. I'm going to look for another job.
Yep.
Well, we tend to have those conversations. Filipinos don't have those conversations. They just resign.
Right.
So, and oftentimes people resign because of simple, small issues that could have been resolved through communication. But again, how do you as an Australian manager know that if you don't understand the culture?
Yeah, and I've got a good example of that. Back in our 33rd show a few months ago, we did an interview with Cynthia Deeren, who runs a international consultancy business. And she actually sits down with, and she's got a team around the world, and she actually sits down and has a meal with each person over Zoom once a week, like you would, with a catch up with a client on a regular basis. And I thought that was an interesting way of actually keeping control and knowing what people are actually going on. Have you seen any examples of things like that in the past?
Yes. So we encourage things like 10-minute virtual coffees.
Yep.
So even our clients who like they know their manager really well or they know their direct team really well may not chat to or have much exposure to the broader business. And it's really important that everyone's involved. Just like here in Australia, like if you walk to an office, you say hello to everybody.
Yes.
Just because they're not in your direct team doesn't mean you wouldn't get to know them or have lunch with them or, like you said, or go to social events with them. So what we try to encourage people to do is, because people are busy and we understand that, is have a 10-minute virtual coffee where you literally both have a coffee.
Yep.
And you don't talk about work. You just talk about each other. Like,
Yep.
This is who I am. This is why I came here. This is what I like to do on weekends. So people instantly build that relationship.
Yep. Yeah.
And they go, oh, you're a cool person. Oh, I like you. Oh, you're like me.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think that's gold, and I've started doing that just in my own business here, and it just really helps build that relationship. Well, Nerissa, that's really great. I'm sure everyone's got a lot of value out of this. Can we move into the topic? I always like to talk about people about the future. So obviously there's a lot of disruption in industries. Yours is no different. What do you see as the biggest challenges in your industry in the next 5 years?
I think the same challenges we experience will be the same challenges all businesses experience, which is how does automation, how does AI affect how we do business?
Yep.
So I think offshore. I've personally seen businesses in Australia really having to turn to offshoring as a valuable and wonderful solution and sometimes they're forced into it.
Yep.
So I think the market in terms of our industry is businesses are much more receptive because they want to grow, and sometimes they need to have two parts. They need to be able to put their back end processes in another country where they can reinvest in their Australian business.
Yep.
With salespeople, with client-facing roles or strategy roles. So I think for our business, what we'll see is more and more small to medium-sized businesses will definitely go down the offshoring route.
Yep.
and see it contributing to their business. And I think personally, like I can't predict what's going to happen with offshoring, but I think as a business owner, I think we're all very I think it's an exciting time because it's like, what can be automated? What can make our businesses run better? How can we be better? How can we do better? How can we grow more? So to me, in terms of disruption, I think it's more around how can we use these technologies to benefit our businesses. And I think anyone in client-facing role, I mean, you just have to get better in the client-facing relationship because that will never go away. And I think it's going to become more important.
Yep.
I think that traditional of we catch up, we don't just text, we don't just message. Like if you look at salespeople now, a lot of them will approach you via LinkedIn or emails. They don't even pick up the phone like they used to. I think it will actually revert some of that back to that because that's what we crave, that human interaction.
That's right. Yeah, I tend to agree. So what's next on the horizon for you?
I would say growth, absolute growth. We're only 2 years old, so we definitely want to keep growing our business and keep attracting the right sort of clients. And I think that's what's exciting is we have some wonderful clients who believe the same things that we do. You know, they value people. They want to see their business grow, whether it's revenue or products, etc. They've got a growth mindset, and they're good people. So for us in the horizon, we want to keep attracting businesses who are like-minded, who want to look at their people resources and say, how can I do things better? And they want to treat their offshore teams like they would here with respect and you know, and have a good working relationship.
Great, that's excellent. So before I let you go, I'll, if you don't mind, I'll just throw you into our quick fire round where I ask 3 questions and just give me a short answer to each of those things. So first of all, what book are you currently reading? It can be a business book or any other book. I'm
actually rereading the book called Quiet by Susan Cain. Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of that. So tell us a bit about that. Briefly.
Yeah, look, honestly, it's brilliant. It's a book designed for introverts and how to excel in the extroverted world.
Okay.
And surprisingly, you may not believe this, but I'm actually an introvert. So even though I realised that I had trained myself how to be extroverted in a work mode, in business mode, it actually is a great book for even parents who have introverted children about they generally succeed at school, so they're generally quite good in school, but how do you prepare them for the extroverted workforce and what tools they can do? And even as business leaders, as managers, how do you keep rising through the ranks in your career? So I really recommend that for those who are introverted themselves or have introverted children or have introverted people in their teams.
Yeah, okay. I'll have a
how to
look
get
at
the
that.
best out of them.
We'll link that.
Yeah,
in the
it's
show
great.
notes. Yeah. So, what book do you think that every business owner should read?
Oh, unquestionably, Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Brilliant book.
It absolutely, it changed our business. It changed our personal lives. And if you don't mind, I have a quick story about that.
That's fine.
One of our friends is general manager at Nova, and he'd just come back from England and we caught up with him and it was like a different person. He was highly energized, he was always energized and motivated, but to a different level. And he told us about this book that totally transformed his personal life. And then he was able to implement that across his team. And he was seeing just a massive change in the work output, but also the motivation and the team cohesiveness. And he actually made us get into a bus. So he was like, you guys need to buy this book and you need to buy it now. So we actually got in a city glider from Tenerife to the city, went to Dimmicks. He literally forced us into the Dimmicks and was like, you're both going to buy a copy each. So we did, and honestly transformed our lives. And all anyone who starts working for us, so our employees, they all get that book. And we actually make them do presentations on what they've learnt and how they're going to apply it, and so that we also understand their why.
That's great.
Yeah,
and
absolutely recommend that.
I was going to say that I actually interviewed Peter Docker, who works with Simon in show 82. For anyone who's interested, so businesslegallifecycle.com/082. and I interviewed Peter Docker, who actually wrote the sequel, which is Find Your Why, which is the practical steps to actually get it. And he's the how to Simon's why. So if you're interested, if anyone's listening and interested in that, check that one out. We'll link it in the show notes. And the final question, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I think that would be, I would give it to myself now as well, is continue to be bold and be brave.
Yep.
So when I look back at myself, Jeremy, I'm not the smartest person and I'm not the brightest, but when I look back some of the things that I've done, it's generally driven by fear, but it was because I wanted to make it happen. And I've done some crazy things and made some leaps. And luckily for me, it's worked out. And I think when I think back, I would say continue to do that. But even now, when I look at myself now, I think remind yourself that it's important to keep taking risks.
Yep.
It's important to challenge yourself and do the things that you're terrified of doing.
Yep. I think that's great advice. So look, as once again, thank you very much for your time. I know that everyone would have got a lot out of this. Can you think of anything that we might have missed that's important that you want to get over to the viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, I think I would pose a question actually. My question would be to your listeners is, why wouldn't you? And that question relates to, are you into football, Jeremy?
Love football, yeah.
Okay. Did you watch the game on the weekend with Real Madrid and was it Leeds or Liverpool?
Liverpool. I saw the second half of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. It was an amazing game. It's unprecedented where they've won 3 times in a row.
Yep.
And what I talk about is, wouldn't Real Madrid be the team they are today if they only tapped into the local talent?
Yep.
If they only looked at people who were in the first 100-kilometre radius. They have looked globally and found talent, obviously, in Germany, of Spain, Wales, France,
yep.
And they've been able to get the best people, and that's why they're the pinnacle of their sport. And so what I want to put out to the listeners today is you can also have the same access. Yes, you don't have millions of dollars to get a team player like Ronaldo to come on board, but what we're all empowered and what we all have access to now is the best talent in the world, and how that can dramatically affect your business and the improvement of your business, the innovation of your business. So for those who've been thinking about offshoring, to be honest, my question is, why wouldn't you?
Yep.
Why wouldn't you look into it? Why wouldn't you have a chat to explore it? So that's my thing today.
That's great. I think that's a good thought process for everyone to go through. Why wouldn't you do that? And the final question is, where can people reach you if they want to discuss anything further with you?
Okay, so if you want to check out our website, I'm sure this will be in your show notes, but it's filterglobal.com.
Yep.
Feel free to call me and I will give you my personal mobile. It's 0401 304 457. You can connect with me on email, which will nerissa.chaux@filterglobal.com. Or if you want to check out what our team's up to,
yep,
and what our office is like, and all the shenanigans, oh my gosh, that they get up to, check out our Facebook page, which is just Filter Global.
Yep. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Nerissa Chaux. As I said at the beginning, the 3 top things I hope you get away from that is the difference between offshoring and outsourcing, particularly. Nerissa does talk about the 4 pillars of using people outside your business. But I think that distinction is really important for people, the listeners and the viewers to understand. Also, understanding the challenges. Yeah, I love talking about challenges because I think what it shows is the challenges that people actually have in business. And when you have them, business is a lonely place. And when you have challenges, often us business owners think, oh, it's all me. I'm the one with all these problems. And I think it's great to see that the challenges are very similar across the board. And the same is there about the examples that Nerissa and I go through about where people get things wrong, and just seeing how across different industries those challenges are and those problems are. So look, I think that's a really great interview. I hope everyone got out of that. Craig, do you want to finish off?
Yeah, absolutely. So as always, thanks for joining us. We hope you got a lot out of that interview. If you want to look at the show notes or the workbook, go to businesslegallifecycle.com.au/095 for show number 95. Please like the video on Facebook or wherever else you might be viewing the video. And as always, if you've got any questions, please either get in contact us directly via email or comments on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else you might be viewing us. So yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week for Fast Fix Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.